Dear trustees and staff, my name's Jack Fonseca. I'm a director at Campaign Life Coalition, a national pro-life group that is fully aligned with the moral teachings of the Catholic Church. More importantly, I'm a faithful Catholic parent from Kitchener, a separate school ratepayer, and the father of a 13 and 15-year-old in grades 8 and 9 respectively. I love Jesus Christ, His Holy Catholic Church, and I've raised my children to do the same. Unfortunately, recent news of a Waterloo Catholic School Board elementary school leaves me with this distinct impression that this board does not feel the same. A concerned Catholic parent from Canadian Martyrs Catholic Elementary School recently discovered a trove of brazenly inappropriate LGBT propaganda books prominently displayed in the school library. This parent wishes to remain anonymous for fear of reprisals against themselves or their children. But photos taken by the concerned parent show that a trio of LGBT romance books were set out prominently on a special display table in the library, literally luring students with a sign reading, "Try this book." And you can see that photo on your screen now. These titles, Stuck With You, You Owe Me One Universe, and Secret Me, feature homosexual teen romance and sexual seduction. They run contrary to Christian values like chastity and the biblical definition of marriage between one man and one woman. For example, on page 169 of Stuck With You, a teenage boy named Ben, the narrator of the story, describes wanting to sleep with another boy named Caleb. Listen to the following passage, which even includes swearing. "Don't be mean to Benny," Caleb said. "You're mad at me, not him. Don't treat him like SH_T. Just because you're mad at me. All right, now I wanted to sleep with Caleb too." The story continues to build sexual energy as Ben, the male narrator, describes passionately kissing the other boy, Caleb, in the school hallway to the cheers of other student onlookers. Let me read out one passage from the book. "I leaned forward and kissed Caleb, right there in the hallway, in front of his friends and my friends. I distinctly heard Raj leading a cheer behind me, and then Caleb was kissing me back, and I didn't hear much of anything after that. All I could process was how good a kisser he was, and how he tasted like toothpaste and coffee. Weird combo, but I didn't mind." This book reads like an LGBT version of a steamy, raunchy Danielle Smith romance novel. Even if one were to set aside the fact that Catholic doctrine condemns homosexual acts as a grave sin, how are any books describing sexual seduction, passionate kissing, and sleeping together appropriate in a Catholic school? Even if these books were heterosexual teens, or about heterosexual teens, they wouldn't be appropriate. They open the door to corrupting the minds of young impressionable children. A second book at Canadian Martyrs called Pride Puppy targets ages 3 to 5. The book's centerfold depicts transgender and homosexual activists on a float at a gay pride parade with several children in tow. You can see that spread on your screen. It includes a transvestite drag queen plus a woman on one knee proposing marriage to another woman. As you know, this contravenes biblical and church teaching. Pride Puppy also has a colorful page showing two lesbians in bed together. Does this not send a clear message that sexual relations between two persons of the same sex is morally acceptable? We need not have any doubt that's precisely the author's objective. In a third book titled Queer History A to Z, a page titled D is for Drag Culture propagandizes students to celebrate transgenderism and transvestitism, which are also condemned as sinful in the Bible and church teaching. In another illustrated children's book targeting ages 2 to 4 called We Are the Rainbow, The Colors of Pride, it depicts a little boy wearing a red dress. And you can see that image on your screen. Now, in what universe does the promotion of cross-dressing as the opposite sex belong in a Catholic school? I could go on and on citing more examples from these books which attack biblical truth and Catholic moral teaching. However, I'll stop here and focus now on the spiritual, psychological, and physical harm that the Waterloo Catholic School Board is committing by exposing our children to these books. When a Catholic institution teaches children, whether directly or indirectly, that a fundamental biblical or doctrinal belief is wrong, such as in the case of these books, the teaching against homosexuality and cross-dressing that the church holds, it inevitably causes these students later in life to question if the church might also be wrong about many other things that it proposes for belief to Catholics. So now, why can't it be doubted that Jesus really rose from the dead, and that the Eucharist is his body and blood, and that there truly exists a heaven and a hell, or even that Jesus was really God, incarnated in flesh? The decades that the WCDSB has been undermining the Bible and Catholic doctrine on human sexuality with these sorts of anti-Catholic books, and now with the LGBT pride flag at every school throughout June, has resulted in the emptying of the pews. Just go to Mass on Sunday at any Catholic parish and look around, and you'll notice there are almost no children or young adults. It's a sea of gray hair. The undermining of Catholic doctrine by the WCDSB has caused generations of Catholics to stop believing and to abandon the faith. This, in part, is why the pews are so empty in all of our churches. To that point, just a couple of weeks ago, Bishop Douglas Crosby sent an envoy to St. Joseph's Parish in Kitchener to inform parishioners that he is planning to shut the church down because it is not financially viable. Well, if it's not financially viable, isn't it because the pews are empty? The board did that. You and your predecessors planted the seeds of doubt and disbelief in the Holy Catholic faith by teaching generations of children, as you're doing at Canadian Martyrs, that the Church and the Bible are wrong about homosexuality and transgenderism and human sexuality generally. Now, if the parishes start being shuttered, the WCDSB owns that. Next, I'll explain the psychological and emotional damage that the WCDSB is causing to children, especially via its promotion of gender ideology. The decision to affirm a child as transgender, which means supporting the delusion that they're trapped in the wrong body, often leads to puberty blockers, chemical castration in boys, breast removal in girls, and surgical genital removal. When the WCDSB promotes gender ideology with these types of books, it is potentially producing these results in many children. A study published in 2022 found that almost 2/3 of young children who identified as transgender ended up using puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. Many children who suppress puberty and take hormones then end up deciding later on to undergo top or bottom surgery to remove perfectly healthy body parts. In fact, a shocking 2023 study found that hundreds of Canadian girls under the age of 18 received double mastectomies over the past 5 years. Removing perfectly healthy body parts is not medically or mentally sound. This is child abuse. Puberty blockers are powerful drugs which can cause irreversible infertility, make bones brittle, stunt a child's growth, reduce the volume of the brain, increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, blood clots, and various cancers. Promoting gender ideology in schools, therefore, is tantamount to pushing kids into taking puberty blockers, and for many of them, leading them one day to cut off healthy body parts via sex change surgery, whether as an adult or before then. The most authoritative study in the world on the effects to mental health of sex change surgery, a multi-year cohort study commissioned by the Swedish government, found that post-operative transsexuals had a 19.2 times higher risk of suicide. So we know that it's a big lie that affirming a transgender identity in kids saves lives. The opposite is true. When teachers affirm a transgender identity in kids, that will lead a huge percentage of them to puberty blockers and hormones, and eventually many will go down the path of surgical mutilation, where their likelihood of committing suicide skyrockets 20-fold. Given all this incontrovertible evidence, I ask you to remove these LGBT propaganda books from Canadian Martyrs and from every WCDSB school. Furthermore, I urge you to stop flying the LGBT pride flag throughout the month of June. It is an inappropriate secular symbol that promotes sexual lifestyles contrary to Christian teaching. And since the Catholic Church asks every Catholic to honor the Sacred Heart of Jesus in the month of June, I urge you to fly the Sacred Heart of Jesus flag instead. Many Catholic bishops have stated their opposition to the LGBT pride flag, so you have it on good authority that this is what you should do. For example, His Excellency Ronald Fabro, the Bishop of the Diocese of London, has said, quote, "I do not endorse raising the flag in our Catholic universities and schools," end quote. His Excellency Marcel Damphus, the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Ottawa, Cornwall, has called the pride flag, quote, "a political statement that endorses behaviors and lifestyles contradicting the Catholic Church's teachings on the dignity of the human person," end quote. And in a final example, His Eminence Cardinal Francis Leo of the Toronto Archdiocese recently affirmed a strong statement against the pride flag, which reads in part, quote, "There is a belief among some that unless one embraces secular symbols, one cannot be inclusive or accepting. This is simply not true. Where there are cases of injustice and mistreatment of any student, whether they are bullied or rejected due to their sexual orientation, appearance, race, sex, or any other reason, we must seize the moment, address the situation, and ensure that we lead by example as we foster a culture of care and love for every individual. That truth is perfectly represented in our most fundamental Catholic symbol, the cross," end quote. Now, the Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board recently voted to ban the pride flag. The York Catholic District School Board is studying a motion to do the same. Another Catholic board in Northern Ontario passed a policy allowing only the Canadian and Ontario flags to be flown. Please do what is pleasing to God and what is required by the Church. I thank you for listening to me.